Welcome, listeners, to the final episode of Primarily Married, a limited podcast series. Although this is our last official episode together, be sure to follow me, Arioki, on Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube to stay connected and be the first to know when my official podcast and also launches, where I'll explore all things relationships, personal growth, holistic wellness, and more, joined by amazing guests like Jasmine. I truly hope you enjoyed this final conversation. We value this space, platform, and opportunity to be vulnerable and share our experiences with you. If you've enjoyed this series, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing it with anyone you think might benefit, and leaving a comment below. Your engagement means a lot to us and helps others discover our content. Thank you for being a part of this limited series, and I look forward to connecting again soon. Let's get into the episode.
Parenting. That's a thing.
So good to see you.
Good to see you too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Welcome to this episode of Primarily Married. This is Ari. I'm here with.
Jasmine.
What's up, y'all? We're back with another episode. Yeah, our last episode. I hope you enjoyed our rants and our commentary on the various things surrounding relationships with ourselves, with our spouses, with you know our within our culture, our ethnic backgrounds, all the things. Today we're just gonna do like a general conversation about things we learned from getting married, from being married, from now wishing to not be married still. Yes, we're still trucking along in the divorce process. So so we're gonna talk about things surrounding all the things we learned. But yeah, so like I said, there's not really an exact prompt. It's just like, what did you learn from this entire experience of being in a relationship, deciding to get married, getting married, and now deciding to no longer be in that marriage?
That's a hefty question.
Yeah, it's a lot. And you don't have to share everything, but
Hmm.
like what's like coming to your mind.
Oh my goodness. What did I learn? I learned a lot.
I know so much. I was trying to think
Yeah.
of like specifics, but there's so much stuff I wasn't able to like jot down or remember at this very moment. But
Yeah. I mean, you said something a little earlier about like thinking you know who you are.
mm,
And
right,
I feel like, each decade you feel like you know who you are. And then the next decade you'd be like, what?
yeah.
I didn't even know a little bit about me. I didn't even tap the bottom of the ocean yet, you know?
Well, it's not even just that too. We also evolve
You
every 6 to years to a decade. So it's
Very
like
true. Very
you
true.
just constantly relearn yourself, and that's something I knew going into marriage. But I don't think my spouse knew. Like I don't think my spouse realized
The constant evolution of
the
what it takes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then towards the end of our marriage is when I was going through that really huge shift as a woman, that age between like I got married when I was 28 or about to be 28.
Hmm.
So I was 27, about to be 28. And I think that's a huge shift for most women of between 28 and like 32, where like you get this like super clear understanding of like your values and also like what you're going to stand for, what you're not going to stand for. Um, and more so about, like you said, those hard things of like taking accountabilities in these different areas and not no longer it's like a leveling up of maturity that
Yeah.
happens at that time. And so for me to be married in that pivotal transition, I think that had a lot to do with my decision to end the marriage. So I had like this so much clarity
Hmm.
going through that stage.
Yeah, um I could I can totally see that. I so when it comes to marriage in general, like I do want to put the disclaimer out there, like, it's all about maturity and you can be
Mm,
mature at whatever age, right?
yeah.
And with that, here are my lived experiences, right?
Right.
So frontal lobe develops right around what, like 25
So,
and 25, 26. And then to your point, for me, I'm like,
yeah.
I don't think it really, really, really kicks in, like really develops fully until you're about 30.
Yeah.
No.
So there's this like study that they kind of teach us that our frontal lobe develops around 25, but in some men it takes up till they're 28.
Mm,
And then also for men, there's another hormone that develops around the age of 28. It's pretty much their biological clock for them.
hmm.
And so that's when they start thinking about settling down and finding a wife and wanting to start a family.
Around like 28, 29, 30.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for us, we've already developed our frontal lobe 25. And also, we've already had that from cultural influences, of course, but also just from a natural being a woman. Like, we've already had that desire to,
Socialization,
yeah, socialization of
conditioning,
conditioning to want to be a wife, want to have
gender,
children,
stereotypes, yeah,
yeah, family
all those
thing.
things.
So that's when men or women are kind of aligned around that age. But it's also that time of life for women to make that huge shift.
Hmm.
So it's like people who's been in a relationship similar to how yours was, like from high school or young adulthood, is around that time where men be like, I know you since you was 14. Like,
Why you changing?
yeah, this ain't the woman
You
or the girl.
acting brand new.
Yeah,
Like,
because it's like now
sir.
now the guys are like, yeah, let's take the stairs, let's settle down. And it's like, but you ain't the same girl I met in chemistry in 10th grade. Like, what's going on? So I think it's constantly like, and then also sexually, we're different. Like, women start peaking in their 30s in their sexuality and like
In their
needs
30s.
needs and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I thought, as far as I'm concerned, like, isn't it something? Look, we over here talking a lot of science, like we, like we, it's the science degree out, but
I do
uh,
have a science degree.
period. Okay, well there you go. Um, no, so like, um, women's sexual drives increase, right, as we
Yeah.
age, and then
Yeah.
for men they decline, right?
Yeah.
They decrease, which is interesting. That's a whole nother topic because it is true. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, when there's a lot to it, what in the sexual aspect. So there's that. I would say too, as a for me, high school, young, right, and also very much like almost like a like ooh pick me,
Mm,
I want to like all that, like wanting to in a sense mold my be chosen, be picked as the
yeah.
girl, right, as
Yeah.
like as far as like wanting to be with this person, wanting to be with this person. So what does that take to be with this person, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds cringe, but it
And it's
it's
just it's
what it
reality,
is,
yeah.
right? And so it's like, so what does that look like? Compromising a lot of me, right?
That
And
was
so,
one of the notes I made for myself. Things I
okay,
learned.
uh-huh,
I compromised my values to be loved because I thought I had to.
mm-hmm,
That's one of the things I learned.
right. I mean, even like, who was I might have been talking to somebody. Oh, I was, but it's like, um, everybody else is dating,
Hmm.
everybody else is having intercourse, right?
Hmm.
Like, either it's something wrong with me, right?
Hmm.
And then even growing up, I'm like, there wasn't like we didn't have access to like the internet wasn't it wasn't
Yeah.
like that where you could be
Right.
like, oh, it's podcasts I can listen to and all these things I could just have at my fingertips. Like,
Yeah.
no, that was not the world we grew up in, right? And
Hmm.
so there wasn't anyone outside of my environment that was different, right? That I could look to and be like, oh, now if I was had my like in my relationship with God stage, like all the way through and through, probably would have been a different story. That wasn't the case either,
Right.
right? With all that being said, to your point, by the time I got hit my 30s and things started. Oh, but by the time I did end up, got married, did all the things that I thought I was supposed to do, i.e., graduated from college, got married, um, you know, had a kid, bought a house, all those things that come with that, not in all those, in no, order all that stuff, right? I was like, this ain't it. I did everything that
You checked all the
and I
boxes.
checked all the boxes. It wasn't always, like I said, it wasn't necessarily in that order and those orders all the time, but which it plays a big role, I think, too. And I did what I felt like was expected of me, and um, I lived the life that I thought, like even when I say what was expected of me, what my parents wanted for me, what I thought, right, or and what just I don't know what I thought that I was supposed to do,
Right.
and I still felt empty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I still felt like I'm again compromised a lot of myself to like my own detriment. So then it was like, hey, what is it? So then I really started like getting into my Bible, getting into my relationship with God, praying, like, really, like, really, oh man, I was waking up, you know, like just to have a moment to myself before the kids got up, right? To like really be intentional about my personal time and development with my relationship with God. And I was like, man, once I really kind of got to that point, it felt as though I was like asleep all those years. I was like, wow, I must have been really like sleepwalking. Like it legit felt like that, like all my years through college. And I felt like I finally
just going through the motion.
Just going through the motion.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and that was the toughest like
realization.
Yeah. Um, and like towards the ending of my relationship, it just felt like I said, it was like I felt like I was now awake.
Yeah.
Like things that were coming out that I had never shared with anybody, was coming out. And I was just like, this is weird. Like, why do I feel like I'm so open now? I'm so awake now. Like just so clear minded,
exposed.
Yeah. And so yeah, it was interesting. So
transparent,
and I valued that.
Yeah.
And so even now it's like I value it so much to where like I don't want to lose it. Like even like my relationship with God, like there's moments where I'm just like things can get so busy and loud, and it's like even those were like ending, like in the ending of my relationship was the most closest I've ever been with God. You know what I mean? Like over the years of my life, and I remember like as a child, I was as a young child. I had moments where like because that was all I knew was God, because I was, my parents, my mom specifically brought me to church, right? And so and over the years, I'm like I could see myself being the moments when I was really, really, really close to God.
Yeah.
And so towards the ending of my relationship, I was really, really close to God. And now that I'm on this side of it, I'm like, ooh, that was rough. That was hard. But what I got from it was just it
More
was so
precious,
beautiful.
priceless.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, how do I move forward now in my life and still have that?
Yeah. You think that's why you're so
That
close?
might be why I'd be like, child. Yeah, I'm like, nah, I'm content. I don't know about trying to get. That's legit though.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's true. I'm like, cause no,
I
for
can't
real,
lose this
I
again.
can try.
I can resonate with that too, because I feel like uh, there's plenty of times, not just my marriage, but just plenty of times of um wanting to be chosen, and also when I finally quote unquote was chosen, like putting that relationship head in my life when it's not supposed to, right? like fully devoting myself to these individuals the way God wanted me to fully devote myself to Him. And it's like God already chose me,
Hmm.
like I don't have to fight or
Compromise.
compromise
Mm-mm.
or do anything. Like He's already chosen me. So I can resonate with like having, well, for me, I'm not gonna put this on you, but me having a fear of like getting into a relationship um too early or prematurely because like have I healed, have I addressed this, have I developed in this area enough to like not set you aside again, and if I get in another like serious relationship. So I think that's something I've been kind of going to God about, is just like for one, I don't feel like I'm ready to be in a relationship. Like I have so much I need to get myself together with. But on top of that, it's just like I have this underlining like skepticism about myself and my own expectations of like, am I gonna put God on the back burner if I find this amazing person that I want to spend my life with or spend a season with, whatever that may look like. And so I think that's partially as well as my hesitation of like getting or pursuing a relationship in that way. So I definitely resonate with that part
Well,
and the closeness of like feeling similar to you, like at the end of the relationship, just feeling more secure and also that clarity part,
mhm.
that sense of clarity of like, no, this is a clear confirmation and answer of like what I need to do and how to move forward.
Mm,
But yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's real, and then like I'm already sharing my time with my kids, right? And I say that in a sense of like graduated from college when I was 21, right?
right.
At least the 4 years, right? And it was what 21, 22, 23. Got pregnant like 3 years after college, right? And then, so in a sense, it was like there was never really a time for me to be
Just you.
single.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, to that point, it's like you, child, by end of like, yeah, like all of that you said when it comes to a relationship again, it's like I so value my autonomy. I
Mm-hmm.
so value like um, my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, I'm a mother, right? So it's like I'm not. I don't play about my time anymore.
Yeah.
So you got to be some like and
Something
it has to be
special.
so natural. Like
Yeah.
it has to be just this organic, natural thing. And if it's not, like, I'm sorry. Like I might as well. I'm gonna keep it pushing.
Yeah.
Like and just yeah, you know. And that's what I mean about like just being content
Yeah.
in all
Content.
my ways, you know, and not expecting like just being content like that. I think that's such a blessing, just be able to just be content in every aspect of your life. And if there's a little cherry on the top, be like, oh,
Right.
okay, that's nice. I wasn't expecting that.
Right. Exceedingly and abundantly.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's me.
Another thing I feel like, which ties into what we've been discussing um, just now, was I learned to trust myself and I learned to trust God.
Trusting self. That's a good one too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like similar to you, I feel like I was just doing life based on someone else's expectation of me. So I was doing all the things I was supposed to do, go to college, get married, all the things. And during the same time of me realizing like maybe this marriage isn't what isn't God fearing or God what God intended
What
for
God
me.
has put together
Yeah,
and no man part, child. We just out here putting together
just
relationships
doing
that
stuff,
God did not do.
just
But
doing stuff.
anyways, right?
That's when I learned that I
And be like, blessed Lord.
didn't. Right? Just ridiculous. That's when I learned that I lacked trust in myself because I was
Mhm.
so dependent on other people's opinions.
Mhm.
Oh, should I do this? Should I not do this? But that was instilled in me of like my
It's a
elders
child.
constantly having say, constantly having control over what I do and what I don't
Absolutely.
do. So they held such a huge um, position, but also like how do you say it? Like I,
I'm trying to think of it, but like the position, say, opinion, like,
yeah, like it was a huge factor in
mm-hmm,
everything that I did in life.
facts, same.
And when I studied communications in my undergrad, there was this term called significant other. We use it as like our romantic partner, but in
Mm-hmm,
communications, it's just a person who opinions you value the most. Um, and we had to write a paper about the person, and I was so stuck writing that paper because I was like, everyone like in my family, like they have that such a strong pull of like how
mm-hmm,
I make my decisions. I ended up writing about one of my best friends, but city even in that moment, I was just like, why did so many people have such like a tight or like like I shouldn't have that many quote unquote significant others,
yeah,
in my
yeah,
life. And so that was
absolutely.
the first red flag. But then when I went through the whole this part of my life, I realized like how much of an issue it was
Mm-hmm,
and how much I was like living out life for others and not living
mm-hmm,
out life for myself and like living out life for God. So that's when I went through therapy, got,
yeah,
went through all the God did. That's like I went through all that stages
mm-hmm,
of him like showing me how to trust myself and use the
yes,
discernment that he has given me and like trusting him.
mm-hmm,
When it comes to trusting him, my huge one of my huge factors of me like being hesitant about the divorce was like financial stuff. And so he had to show me like haven't I taken you throughout your entire life without going without all your needs and not even just my basic needs but just wants, like have I always provided for you, like why would you not be good now?
mm-hmm,
And so that was the huge lesson as well in that of learning how to trust God, because that was the last thing that was on my mind about like making that decision to leave.
mm-hmm,
And but yeah, so that's why I learned to trust myself and to trust God.
yeah.
That's one of my
That's
lessons.
that's same. I
Yeah.
sound like we had very similar upbringings in the sense of like it was they just was strong. Like
Yeah.
I lived in a house that's like the only girl, right? I had
Mm.
my mom was there and my dad, but like just very opinionated individuals in my household, all the boys.
Yeah.
And my dad, very opinionated. And even now, and I think it's one of those things where it's like just because you got through like one, so I'll put it like this: boundaries are something that's ongoing.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, like even all the times like once I finally got to therapy and I finally or went through therapy and are continuing, right, and then doing all the different um, modalities and reading
Mhm.
self-help books
Yeah.
and continue to develop within my relationship with God. um, Learning how to implement my boundaries, it's ongoing. it
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't stop just because I learned how to do it in one season. It's ongoing
Or one area of
in
your
one
life.
area. Like I
Yeah.
still have to continue to be intentional about not allowing all the voices to be so loud and to
Mhm.
develop that special time, carve out that time where I can just be alone within myself, so that I can recognize my own voice and I can recognize God's voice.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, it and it's very same, very similar. Like yeah, like having to, and that's the thing. So like in the ending of my relationship,
Mhm.
that's what it was. It was like I out of all of the noise, like it was like I was in like a little shielded ball where it was
Yeah.
literally just me and God, and like I drowned out to the point where like I didn't tell nobody
Yeah.
what I decided to do with me and God in my quiet place.
Mhm.
I didn't tell, like my therapist was like, "You didn't who nobody knows." I was like, "No." She was like, I said, "My friends." I said, "I have
Yeah.
I have two friends that know." And she was like, "Not a family member?" At this point, I'm packing up the house.
Right.
The for sale signs outside. They like she like, ma'am. I was like, she said, you have to tell at least one person in the family. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna choose the one brother who's extremely busy. And that's what I did. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so he knew like all the things, but he couldn't, because he was
Has
doing
some
what he
own
had,
stuff going
right?
on.
And so and it worked, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
For me, I told people I told three people, two of my best friends and one of my sisters, like what was going on, like when it was coming to that point of me like finally making my decision. So they knew all of the, how do you say this, the timeline of the different things that were occurring, and they knew the effort I was putting in because I told myself that if whenever I make this decision, I want to be stern and stand on it and trust it and be confident in it. So I also do everything in my power, in my control. So if I am faced with those different voices and stuff, that I can stand on it and know that this was a genuine trial on my end. So going to couples counseling, I'm doing all the different couples activities and whatever, doing all the different things to try to save or uphold or help this relationship thrive in a healthy way before saying I give up or like I'm giving in or whatever, because I just wanted myself to be like, you literally did every single thing you could. Like you fasted, you went to God, you guys did all the steps and tried all the things, and this is where it still led to. So this is where we're at. So when it was time for me to tell my family, they of course, like you said, had their opinions. Oh, like this is just marriage. Oh, every marriage is different. It's gonna be hard at times, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, I understand y'all don't get it because y'all don't have the full scope of all the things, and also I did all the things I need to do to be confident in this decision I'm making. So even though it was a few months of them trying to convince me and trying to, all the things, I felt very confident in the decision. So I got a lot of peace, even with all the voice. I had a lot of peace even with all the voices. Side quest. I learned in one of my child development classes about like parents grieving their children,
hmm,
and it's about grieving the ideal of what your children, who
hmm.
your children are going to be.
Oh yeah.
We talked about it in a sense of like if a child's born with like a disability
Mm,
or something, like that's usually where the most grieving happens. Some people approach it from like the
hmm,
LGBTQ part, like they imagine their child to get married to a specific gender and have
hmm,
children naturally, things like that. Also, we just talked about like this different stages of the child that's developing, like what they're going to be like in elementary versus
hmm,
junior high versus high school versus college, if they decide to go to college or not, if they
hmm.
decide to get married or
It's
not,
constant.
they decide to have children or not, they decide to stay in the hometown or not, they all the things.
Hmm,
And so I understood that, learning that early on in college helped me understand what my family was going through, because they had this idea of what my life will look like, or this, especially once I got married, they're like, oh, like you said, she's set, she's safe,
hmm,
she's taken
hmm,
care of. So I had a lot more grace. I wasn't like going in their heads like, y'all just so da, 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 da. I was just like listening and just letting them get it out. And
hmm,
so I'm like, okay, they're grieving right now,
hmm. Now look at
so
you being able to put names to it and
yeah,
studies and
yeah. So
yeah.
I was just like, oh, they're grieving right now, so I'm gonna let them process. So we
Hmm,
had to grieve. We had to
hmm,
grieve our marriages,
hmm,
what we thought would be our forever, what we thought would be healthy and safe for us, what we
hmm.
thought was the right decision for us, all the things, right?
Yeah,
So, what for you, like what you thought parenting would look like,
yeah.
all the things. So I was just like, I gotta let them have their moment. I'm
Hmm.
having mine. They gonna have theirs.
Yeah, allow everybody to grieve. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Kids grieving. There,
right.
yeah. everybody
Yeah.
has their lived experience, right?
Another thing I learned is that I didn't fully grasp the understanding of pros and cons list.
Hmm.
Here's my advice. If you ever had to do a pros and cons list, leave don't even get in a relationship. Don't even continue the relationship. If it ever
Interesting.
gets to a point you're just if you
Where you
have
pull
to
out that turn the page over half the page and write pros and cons. I think I did that too, actually.
if you ever get to that point,
It
it's
was
not
a
meant to
mess.
be.
So I was just like, yeah,
It's not
child.
meant to be.
That's funny.
But anyways, yes, I did that as well, right?
Uh-huh.
Before we got married.
Oh, before you got married.
Yeah. And what I didn't grasp the understanding of is like numbers, like the list, like the item list of numbers don't really matter. So
Mm-mm.
if you have 16 pros and 3 cons,
What them pros look like?
yes.
Elaborate on them. What them cons look like? Let's talk about it.
Oh, I don't remember
No, no,
now.
I'm
Oh,
saying,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, no, no.
I'm about to
The
say I
numbers
probably still
don't.
got it somewhere.
The numbers don't matter. Yeah, no.
um,
I did it exiting, not in the
exiting.
beginning.
Oh,
So that's
okay. Yeah, so we were opposites.
mm-hmm.
And what I failed to realize is like the 3 things. This is just hypothetical. I don't remember the exact numbers. But like the 3 things that I was like, oh, those are 3 cons. That's not bad because they look at all these pros, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the items individually, how much does that pro weigh and how much does that con weigh?
Mm-hmm.
So if a pro for someone is like, oh, he takes me out on dates every weekend, right? That can be someone's pro. But then a con is, oh, we have different parenting styles that we want to adapt. How much does that weigh? A date on
Right.
a weekends versus you having to parent with this person the rest of your life? Those have completely different values. They weigh two completely different measurements of weight.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized that after the fact. When I look back at the pro list, I said, I had all these pros, but look at these very shallow pros that I had compared to all these
Mm.
major cons. And that's when
Mm.
I realized, like, first off, you shouldn't be doing a pros. If it gets to that, shouldn't be in it.
No bueno. Yeah.
Secondly, if you do that, you need to really understand the weight of the items, not
Yeah.
how many items are on each side. So that was something I learned of how to actually
Mm.
use the pros and cons if I'm gonna use it. That was one of the lessons I learned.
That's good. That's good.
It was intense.
The amount of things you learn in hindsight.
Right, in hindsight. In hindsight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some things that I was just it's like how where was I at? Like what was
Yeah.
my my thought process, my just all the things like
And another thing around the trusting part, like trust myself, I think a huge factor of that was going to premarital counseling because we went to premarital counseling through the church. And a lot of what the leaders were saying, because we had a couple leading us, right? It's like, oh my goodness, you guys are, because we did it in a group setting, which was really cool. I'm not against that.
okay.
We did it in a group setting with other
I
couples.
can see that being valuable.
It was very valuable. Well, I don't know what he got into it. It was very valuable for me. And they would always say like, "Oh my goodness, we go through you guys's because you do like journaling and
Mm-hmm.
homework assignments and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, we go through your papers and like you guys are like the most compatible couple, like amongst your answers and like what you're,
Oh, the two of you were.
yeah, what you're reflecting on and
Okay. Yeah.
things like that. And then like they would always be so encouraging to us and always have like positive things to say about us, like before or after sessions and stuff. And so it made me question myself. I'm like, if because I was already kind of weary. I was just like, I want this, but like, is this right?
And
Eh,
so did that encouragement give you like
I felt like
insight
yeah, I felt like
into
I was tripping. I was like, maybe I'm overthinking things, but I'm being really negative. Maybe
mm,
I'm just like being pessimistic. Like if everyone sees us as such a great couple, like even my family and even like some other people we know, even his family, they're like, oh my god, you guys are so like such a beautiful couple, like not just how we look together, but like how we, I guess, interact with each other and all the things. Like I was
Hmm.
just like, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I'm too in my
Mm.
head because everyone sees such a how amazing we are, and
Mm.
that weighed a lot in my decision making. But that also showed how much I didn't trust my own self, my own
Judgment.
intuition, my own
Hmm.
discernment, and things like that. So that felt like that was part of my me learning to trust myself too. Looking back at that, like, girl, you trust these people that knew you for 6 weeks,
Right.
and these people who probably only been around you guys here and there, special occasions to like really make help you make that decision as a
That call.
lifelong decision,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, that was yeah, those voices like you spoke of earlier, those voices can
The voices.
I learned another thing I learned is that I operated out of a space of like insecurity and desperation. Like we spoke about like wanting to be chosen, feeling like I wasn't worthy of like better or like someone else.
Hmm.
Um, um, the other thing I learned was I didn't go after things or people that I wanted, and I accepted the
Hmm.
bare minimum.
Hmm.
That was something I learned. I learned that my whole life, I always just
Hmm.
accepted what was there and what was, you know, how people's like, I'm gonna be for what's for me. But it's just like, are those people and things really for you? Or that's just what's in your proximity, you know?
Mm. A lot of relationships, at least young, right? You ain't moving nowhere.
Yeah,
High school, or
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
proximity is played a key.
A huge key.
Yeah.
And also like you accepting what you believe you're worth.
Mm.
And I
That's
think that was a
big.
big thing for me is just like accepting people because I feel like, well, that's what I'm worth, you know.
Hmm.
And that back then, of course, that's not what I was thinking, but like you said, the hindsight of it all.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned is like I never went after things and people that I wanted. I just like waited for things to be like, I like you, and I'm like, okay, I can learn to like
Mm.
you because you like me.
Mm.
It was a lot
Mm.
of things like that.
I can see that. I can see
Yeah.
that. I think I might have had a little bit of that as well. It was
Mm,
yeah. It was more so like an intimidation. Like the guys and yeah. So I would say that I can empathize and sympathize with your thought process.
mm,
In that. Yeah.
yeah.
With that played a huge role in decision making.
Yeah, and how I dated, who I ended up with, all the things, just insecurities,
Yeah. Hmm.
lack of self understanding, self
Hmm.
worth.
Not being able to see yourself, to see
Hmm.
me. You know what I mean? To
Hmm.
really know your worth, know you're chosen, know that like all the things, what makes you and yeah. And I think even now, on the flip side of it, just being appreciative for who I am,
Mm,
um, how I got here,
yeah,
how I choose to wear my hair, how I choose the clothes I choose to wear, you know what I
yeah,
mean, to dress, how I chose it, like all those things, and being okay with it, being content in all of it,
yeah.
right?
So that's one thing. That was a word that God gave me around this time last year. Was the word He gave me was take what's yours. So
Mm.
go after what I already assigned for you, what I already placed in my will for you.
Love that.
And so that's a mindset I've been trying to keep at the forefront of my mind of just like take what's already mine, what's already, my inheritance
We're
and
created to
belongs to
conquer
me.
the earth. Yeah,
Yeah.
conquer.
One more thing I learned was there anything else you learned that you could think
Honestly, a lot of the things that you have learned are
of?
are very similar
Similar.
to what I have learned as well.
Yeah.
So that's also interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the last thing I learned, and this was post separation. This is early separation, like a few months after he moved out. That he's God's child too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That he's God's son.
Mm-hmm.
So one day driving,
Do right.
I think
Yeah.
I was driving to work, and I was like, I'm just gonna talk to God. I'm not gonna listen to music. I'm just gonna talk to God. And when he brought that to me, I broke down crying.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you crying and driving is not safe. It's not safe at all. And I had to repent and really ask God for forgiveness. I'm like, I'm so sorry for, because
Mm.
you know, we played a part in our marriage too. We may have said things we shouldn't have said or did things we shouldn't have.
Absolutely.
So I'm not gonna put the blame on him that
Mm-mm.
we didn't work out completely because of him, but I had to take accountability in that moment and ask God for forgiveness. Like, I'm so sorry I treated your son that way. I'm so sorry I spoke to your
Mm-hmm.
son that way. I'm so sorry I did this and, you know, disrespected our covenant with you and with our each other and all the things, right? And I was just boohoo crying. I was just boohoo crying
Wow.
because I was just like, I'm so sorry, Lord.
I remember that come to Jesus moment
Right?
that I had. Yeah, no, for sure. And it felt, yeah, I wasn't in the car, but yeah, that was one of the things I had to recognize. Ooh, and it was a tough
Tough pill.
pill to swallow. And
Yeah.
so I put a lot of onus on myself, like even like being in therapy and talking to my therapist. I was like, because what how I ended up feeling about the whole situation was like, it's all my fault. I knew
Mm,
better.
mm,
I should have did better.
yeah.
Like at the end of the day, I had the insight, the knowledge, and the wisdom. Why didn't I choose better? And then
Yeah.
it almost felt like a Eve moment where it was
Mm,
like, yeah, it was all me.
yeah.
And I literally felt like 100% of the blame was me. And I
Wow.
had to give myself grace. That I had to learn to give myself grace and all that, because I was like, yeah, I knew better. I had
I
to be
knew better
real.
too.
You know what I mean? Like
It's just like,
I didn't have the courage though
mm,
to do better, because like I think that's just one part of it. Like I didn't when it, yeah, the moments when I was like, hmm, I didn't have the courage because again, all of the voices, right?
yeah,
Being told what to do my whole life and how to do it, right?
yeah,
That puts a damper on the decision making that you have, your sound judgment. It makes it really blurry, right? And so, again, with that said, um, I felt like a lot of I was just like I had this epiphany. It was like, oh my goodness, this is all my fault.
mm. I had that understanding too because of that same sentiment of like you knew better. Like he may have
Mhm.
not known better, but you knew better.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
never had the thought of like it was all my fault, and I never had the thought of like the reason I didn't make the wiser decision was because wasn't I didn't have the courage. Mine, I feel like was more founded in like just seeking like to be that chosen piece. Like I feel like I was really truly moving out of
Yeah.
insecurities.
Yeah.
Not so much like I didn't have the courage to like walk away when I saw the red flags during our dating years.
Mm.
I was more so like, well, who else is gonna love me? Or like, who else
Mm.
is not gonna cheat on me? Like, who else is
Mm.
gonna pay for things and support me and all the, you know, like it was just like those things where I was like, can I really do better? It was more of
Mm.
that. It was more of that for me of just like, I'm probably about to get married. Also, a huge thing was like I invested so much early on in our relationship before we got married
Oh,
too.
that whole false ideology of thinking
So
you invest. I don't know. To me,
right,
it's a false
it's just like
ideology.
I was like, dang, I
But I get it.
put in all this work, all this time, all
Yeah.
this money, all this energy, all this effort. So I think what for me was it wasn't that like I didn't have the courage to
Hmm.
lead the relationship even prior before the marriage. It was I just didn't have the confidence in myself or that faith piece, that faith in God that God can provide someone better.
Hmm.
You know, I was missing that spiritual lens and
It was both
understanding.
for
Yeah.
me. It was both. It was because that part of what you're speaking of was in the very beginning.
Mm.
And then as the relationship went on, and to be honest, like when I say that I had to give myself grace because this was something that like I had to really like sit with in therapy,
Mm.
and the way like my therapist kind of like explained it to me, it was like I started recognizing how I played
A
a
role.
role
Yeah.
in it too.
Mm-hmm.
And and in a sense that's when I like kind of was like, oh my gosh, then is it my fault? Like because I'm the one
Um,
who, I was
yeah.
aware. But then the thing was, like to my therapist's point, she was like, it doesn't become your fault until you become aware. Now that you are aware and
Mm-hmm.
you choose to continue, then
Okay.
it's your fault. And so in that moment, it was like I had to make a hard decision once I became aware.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, so that's so what you're speaking early on in high school, absolutely. It was child. I don't recommend it. Like I'm just like, yeah, I just because it's just you just it's a lot of like
0 out of 10. Don't
just,
recommend.
and again, age is a number and there are mature people out there. So there's that. Within my lived experience, I'm like, nah, child, we could have did without. Like we
Right.
had a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, for me it was more so like in the midst of like as I evolved in my relationship, I had to recognize where I played a role and how I played the role. And
Mm.
that was when I was like, ooh, I'm so sorry. Like I had to repent and apologize and like have like a come to Jesus moment. It was like
Yeah.
that is your like he's your child too.
Mm.
And that like I see what I did. That whole accountability, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was ready and willing to stand on 10 about it all. And it was just like it was my fault. But again, that's what I said. The grace, what came in there was like, nah, it's not all of your fault. Like I had to even have a conversation with like my brothers and was like, nah, bro, like that's not how that works. Like like everybody played their role.
Mm. Well, that's all we learned.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but like we were saying earlier, there's so many things we learned from this whole experience of being in these relationships, being in these marriages, and post marriage, well, post separation. Um, and we hope that you guys learned some things and have some hindsight that we didn't have before making that decision. Um, but partially also it's a blessing, right? To have such favor even in those marriages. I know for myself, like I wasn't abused, right? I wasn't um harmed, like extremely harmed or anything. So I feel like for me I had favor. Like I had some upset days, right? I was emotionally probably ripped apart, but overall I still had my faith and I still was sustained throughout this time. And I got to have the opportunity to draw nearer to God, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like with all that, that still has favor in it and still was a blessing. We learned all these beautiful lessons. That's a blessing of itself, too. So I wouldn't say I have a regret. I just probably wish I would have learned a different way. But who knows? The other way might have been a worse way to learn. So even looking at it that way, it's still favored, having faith, having God having favor for us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, any last things you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah. Um, just sitting here thinking about it all. Yeah. The when you talk of like regret, that's always a big one. It's like, do you regret certain decisions you made in the past? Like, and to your point, it's like people do it right, people do it wrong. Like you just never know,
Yeah.
right? You never know. Had I done it this way, could it have yielded different fruit?
Hmm.
Sometimes we go through things not for ourselves, for other people, right? So yeah, that's one thing that I always have to like sit with and be like, yo, everything happens for a reason. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I can get the like going to these for other people because now we're a testimony for someone,
mhm,
whether they had a similar experience as us or they want insight around something. It's just like, and we're walking testimonies for God.
mhm,
So it's like, even though even if we did regret it, He's still using that experience and using us in some way.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Contentment.
Yeah. Contentment.
Yes, ma'am. To
That's
be
is that the name
continued.
of the episode?
Just yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for listening. It's been a great journey um, with y'all, just being in the room low key as we process different things around relationships, of understanding ourselves, understanding, what came from our marriages. I hope that y'all got something insightful and valuable out of our conversations. If you, of course, resonate in any way, or if you have more questions, be sure to comment. We appreciate a like and a follow as well, and a share and a subscribe. But we really just doing this as also part of our healing journey, also, and to
Mhm.
connect even more. We learned so much more about each other as well during us recording this. But yeah, thanks for listening to us and being present and holding space, and hopefully have some positive. I know we wasn't trying to be politically correct, so
You said what?
we were not trying to be politically
Oh,
correct.
tried.
Oh, you
You can
did.
always, you can always try, but say stuff to the universe, and it'd be,
People take stuff any kind of way,
yeah,
so
exactly.
we can't
It's
control
what
how
it
y'all
is.
perceive stuff. But like you said, it is what it is. But we appreciate the support and hope to have some more conversations in the future. In my next podcast, hopefully, I'm gonna have Jazz on my next podcast as well. Be sure to subscribe so you can stay tuned for when that drops. It's going to be called And Also. You can subscribe to the channel now. All right,
Mm,
take care, everyone. Anything you want to say to them?
just much appreciation for just riding along with us on this journey.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Peace out. You want to do a freestyle before we get off?
No, I'm just playing.
I was like, I can do the beat. You supposed to be freestyling.